Welcome back. This is your quick start guide to teaching face-to-face online, part 2. We're going to look at the planning process before part 3, which will look at specific pedagogical techniques. As I said, no bells and whistles. This is a transition slide, thinking about the transition to online teaching. First up, you're going to have some decisions that you need to make. The first of which is whether you intend to run your course asynchronously or synchronously. So an asynchronous course would be one where students can, to a certain extent, work at their own pace. They don't have to meet together at a given time in an online format. Certainly you can set some boundaries with that and divide your course up into 1 week long chunks or 2 week longs, however you see fit. The key thing is that in asynchronous courses, students do not meet together at one specific time. Synchronous, of course, is just the opposite of that, where if your class meets from 9 o'clock until 10 o'clock on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, during that time, you are meeting together in a virtual space, using Zoom, most likely. For a number of reasons, we are strongly encouraging faculty to think about asynchronous learning. There are potential resource issues if we move to a synchronous model. Imagine that your student goes home, so does his older brother from another college, and then has a younger sister in high school, and all three of them are expected to be involved in synchronous online learning. And then mom gets sent home to work remotely. Now you've got 4 people competing for the resources. That may be insufficient bandwidth. It may be that there's only 1 computer in the household, and you've put students at really kind of a disadvantage by requiring synchronous sessions. A third model is that you could do a blend where most of the learning happens asynchronously, but then as it works for your students, you schedule time with them to check in a face-to-face setting. Absolutely essential, though, is that if you choose to do your classes synchronously, you must do them in the time that they are scheduled for. You may not want to do an 8 o'clock synchronous session, but if you choose to go synchronous and your class was scheduled 8 a.m. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you need to meet during that 8 a.m. time. Otherwise, if you move your class and it now overlaps with the 11 o'clock Monday, Wednesday, Friday class that the student also has scheduled, and they also are doing synchronous learning, you've put the student in an untenable situation. Another reason to go asynchronous. Once you make that decision, then the next question is, based on my learning outcomes, what are the assessments that I'm going to have to give? What are the things that students are going to demonstrate to me that they have met the learning outcomes? And then from there, what are the learning activities that will assist them as they do that? So as you're thinking about planning, this is maybe my one bell or whistle, is the Ben & Jerry's Chunky Monkey. It's going to really help your students if you think of your course in chunks rather than as a 1 5-week-long block. And what the Center for Teaching and Learning recommends is to use a planning worksheet, something like this one, where we begin by listing the essential student outcomes. We make a communication plan. You make some of the decisions about asynchronous versus synchronous. You figure out what your assessments are, and then your learning activities. And then work backwards from the end of the semester, figuring out what your ideal student is going to look like under these circumstances, and filling in, beginning with week 6, what do you need to do to get them there? And create a roadmap for the remainder of the semester. We don't know yet how long we're going to be online. Dr. Witt's most recent email suggests that we're probably not coming back to classes as quickly as we might hope. So rather than figuring out what do I do for that 1 week after break, go ahead and build out the roadmap for the rest of the semester. And again, we strongly recommend 1 week long chunks. That's going to be the easiest thing for students to manage. So again, Identify your ideal outcome. What does the student look like? What are the things that he or she can do? How has he or she met the student learning outcomes for the course? Plan backwards in 1 week chunks. And for each week, plan what are my outcomes for this week? They should be smaller subsets of your student learning outcomes. What are the activities that will get students to that? And what are the assessments that I will give that will help me to know whether they have met those outcomes? That wraps up the planning session. In our next little short video, we will look at some of the very specific pedagogies and translating face-to-face teaching styles into online.